Hello, boys and girls. Mr. Paust here. I got my classroom laid out for you with all these amazing books that we shared so far. And before you know it, as I said, you'll be in here and you'll be able to read these in person. These excellent stories. And you can also practice reading with expression the way I do with the different characters. Okay? Got my Hershey Park sweatshirt on. This is my absolute favorite place in the world. So sharing that with you today. We're going to read a story about a moose. And some of you heard this story. I wanted to share it with you as well. I go camping all the time. I love camping, especially in the summertime. And a couple years ago, I went camping in the Grand Canyon. The Grand Canyon is beautiful. It's out in Arizona. And what I normally do is I'll fly into Phoenix, rent a car, and then just drive up to Williams, Arizona, where the Grand Canyon is. I stayed on the northern rim. There's a Grand Canyon campsite, and I stayed in a tent, and I had my little fire pit making s'mores the night before. And the next morning, I walk out of my tent, and there was a giant moose. And the story goes is that the moose was bigger than a horse, and they're huge. They're so tall, but they're almost like skinny horses. They're kind of skinny, but enormous, huge antlers. And I just froze, and I kind of just stood at it and looked at him. And the moose just stared back at me. And then after about, a minute or so, it just walked away. And I was shocked. And I eventually talked to the park ranger and asked, I said, are moose aggressive animals? And he told me that for the most part, if you don't cross their path, if you're not aggressive with them, they'll be okay. So I think I did okay in that situation. So this story today I'm going to share with you is about a moose. And I had some experience with moose as well. So I just wanted to share the story with you also. So if you're getting a chance to go camping, take that chance. And another suggestion about camping is that even though if you camp in the summertime, it's warm at night, in the morning it's always cold. So you want to bring sweatshirts, you want to bring extra blankets because the temperature drops. All right, so this story is called There Is a Moose on My Broomstick. And this is a rhyming story. Love rhyming stories, are a lot of fun. And you can read along. It was one of those gatherings in one of those places of strange-looking women with warts on their faces. They were wearing black capes and pointed black hats, and several were holding their own pretty black cats. 'Twas the pot they were stirring, and their chanting so silly that caught the attention of my good friend Willie. Willie's the moose that visited me in Arizona. For he'd stumbled that day in the great north wood upon a witch's coven, surely up to no good. Yet it wasn't the witches or their bubbling brew. What grabbed Willie's eyes were the brooms that they flew. He'd seen them before on a cold autumn night. As they flew across the sky, 'twas a very strange sight. An old woman and a cat gliding high on the broom, clearly lit up by a bright harvest moon. And Willie would watch and remember the night when Santa himself set Willie in flight. Over the country on that night he did soar. Now all he wanted was to fly once more. So he made up his mind, though it might mean his doom, our brave Moose Willie would borrow a broom. He watched and he studied as he returned each night, and he made his plans in spite of his fright. He must be careful, quiet, and quick on the night he borrowed Malfelda's broomstick. For once he was off, the witches would chase, and if Willie should lose the terrible race, there'd be no more North Woods for our brave Willie. No, he'd be put in the pot where they'd boil him silly. And at the end of October, on a crisp autumn eve, ever so quietly our hero did weave a path through the north woods, where he had a date with a great new adventure that might seal his fate. The witches were busy stirring their terrible brew that never hurt Willie as they boiled that stew. Quiet and quick, he grabbed for the broom. Into the night he flew with a zoom. As the best laid plan oft go awry, there came a surprise, and he started to fly. Yee! As into the night he started to soar, there came first a beep, and then came a roar. Who would have thought that a broom that was charmed would come equipped with a broomstick alarm? Our moose, who'd planned to be a cool flying dude, was now a terrified moose being chased by a brood of witches so angry that he'd give a lion a fright. All Willie could do was race into the night. Melfelda herself may have stayed on the ground, but Willie counted 4 other witches around. He zigged and he zagged and he steered between trees. When he looked back, there were only 3. He lost 2 more over the great northern wood lake as he flew very low, then gave a left fake. Witch number 4, though she tried her best, finally gave up and stopped for a rest. Free from this posse, Willie started to soar, as over the Northland he took a grand tour. Over mountain and valley, up hillside and down, over the lakes and the rivers, and over the towns. He was coasting along towards morning, first light, when he suddenly beheld a very strange sight. There on a fence post in black cape and hat, softly weeping and alone, old Melfelda she sat. A witch with no broom is as useless as rust. By night time, she said, I'll have turned all to dust. Now our moose may be silly, but he's never unkind, and did his best to keep that thought in mind. I was just having fun, and I'm sorry you're sad. Then he gave her the broom to make the witch glad. Willie is a good moose. Now on autumn nights, as you hear the winds moan up in the north woods, standing alone, is one silly moose remembering his fright when he rode on a witch's broomstick into the night. So again, there's a moose on my broomstick. This is by Michael MacCurtain. Not too familiar with his books, but I gotta say I do like the illustrations. Any rhyming books are a lot of fun too. You can read it along. And this will be found in our classroom library for you to read when you're here, to bring home. And also, you can revisit this video by playing it multiple times. As I said, anytime I hear a story or read a story, I do it multiple times. The first time just to read the words, the second time to learn something new, and the third time I'm looking for a focus. Okay, so keep that in mind. All right, boys and girls, hope you enjoyed it. Talk to you soon.